Thank you to DistroKid for sponsoring this video and supporting my channel. So recently I put out a video where I made a 2000s style hip hop beat. Now, as I mentioned in that video, the 2000s was the era that introduced me to hip hop, but of course, like any hip hop head, you also have a love for the golden age, the 90s. The 90s were characterized by a lot of sampling. Now, I don't do a lot of sampling myself anymore, but every once in a while, I do indulge just to keep the axe sharp. So then in this video, I want to show you how I made a 90s inspired boom bap type beat with, of course, my own flair. Before we get started though, if you're at the beginning of your own beat making journey and you need a little bit more help or a little bit more clarity, then don't forget to download my free 6-step guide to producing a professional beat. This is a simple PDF guide that you can use to start making beats of your own without breaking the bank in as little as 1 hour. So if you want that free guide, click the first link down below. Okay, so jumping into Studio One here, I'm gonna walk you through how I made this beat step by step. Now, this beat really started with a sample and then Serato sample. Now, I'm not being sponsored or paid by them in any sort of kind of way, but I do believe that Serato sample is the most robust tool, at least that I know of, for sampling inside of DAW. There's a lot of cool features, and I'm sure somebody out there has a review on it, but basically you're able to load your sample, it detects the key, it detects the BPM. From here, you can transpose the key, basically pitch it up or down, and then it has this nifty little feature here at the bottom where it'll find the samples for you. Basically, it'll find the transients based on what it thinks would make good chops. From there, you can start to play different chops with your MIDI keyboard until you find something that you like. Now, what I did here is I pitched this sample up to F sharp minor because originally it was here. So I pitched it up to F sharp minor. And then the cool thing about this plugin is that you're able to record whatever chops you have out in MIDI, rearrange them however you need to, and then eventually once you find something that you like, you can transform it into audio to be able to further manipulate it. So then if you take a look, that's the first thing that I did here. I converted my loop into an audio, and this is what I came up with. Now to spice this up, the first thing I did was I added an EQ, and I cut off everything below 50 hertz, but if you take a look, I also boosted around 82 hertz. Now when dealing with loops, especially loops that have a lot of layers, oftentimes you're going to have to cater around what's already there. Now, if you take a listen to the sample, there's a piano, I can also hear a bell, and then there's also a bass underneath. The bass was so prominent that I didn't even program a bass of my own, at least for the chorus part, but what I did want to do is I wanted to accentuate that bass part, so I used a little bit of an EQ here to boost that up. Next up, I added a bit of a reverb, and for this I'm using the Valhalla Vintage Verb on the 1980s color with a low mix and a low decay. You can see the settings here. Then I added a bit of RC20 retro color, which is kind of like the quintessential, sample kind of plugin because it basically adds that vinyl crackle. That was it in terms of processing. So now the sample sounds like this. Now, once the sample was in place, I went down to the drums to kind of create a bit of a cadence. First thing that we did here was I programmed a snare, which is on the 2 and 4, and then a hi-hat, which was playing 8th notes. So if we bring those in, this is what we get. Now, at this point, I was really liking the texture of those drum sounds that I picked, but the hi-hat was a little too tinny, way too piercy on the top end. So then the first thing that I did was I added an EQ here, and I basically filtered it out, everything below 100 and everything above 56K. For the snare, I also went ahead and I added a bit of an EQ, which is basically just cutting off everything below 100. And then I added a bit of a Valhalla room, some slight reverb just to kind of give it a little bit of that brightness. And now we get this. Now, after I have the snare and the hi-hat, I like to start programming a kick just to kind of get a full feel for what that drum cadence is going to sound like. Now, the kick, honestly, was a super simple pattern. I basically just filled it in where I thought would feel good. A lot of times what I like to do is when I'm programming kicks, if I don't play them by hand, I will sound them out in my head and then place a note where I sound it out. So this is what that sounds like. Now to the kick, what I basically did is a little bit of an EQ, just cutting off everything below 50 to leave that room for the bass in the sample. And then I also added knock, which has become at the moment my favorite drum plugin. Shout out to Decap, adding a bit of punch, a bit of saturation, and a bit of soft clipping. So this plugin is not one that I would say you can notice it by itself, but really it becomes more apparent within the mix because it definitely makes that kick pop. Okay, the last thing that I added here before moving on was a live hat. For this, I brought in my Easy Drummer, and that I did play here by hand on my Atom, just because I wanted that swing of the no quantization, and then, you know, just kind of like those random velocities to add a little bit of texture. So if I add that in, this is what it sounds like. Now, if I'm being honest, when it comes to like sampled beats, a lot of times there's not much that you need to do because again, that sample that you use to make your chops might already have a lot of layers underneath. Now for this specific beat, I still did want a little bit of body in there, so I brought in some keys that I found from Analog Lab. Now they're these very like 80 kind of vibey, synthy keys. By themselves, they sound like this. And then once you add everything in here at the moment, this is what we get. Now, believe it or not, that was the chorus. That was literally the main part of the beat. This is one of the easiest beats that I've made. But the real complexity of it comes when it comes to the arrangement. Before we get to that, though, I do want to take a quick minute and thank the sponsor for this video, DistroKid. DistroKid is the digital music distributor that I've been using to release my own beat tapes, and with prices starting at $20 a year for unlimited uploads, it is by far the easiest and most affordable way to release your music to streaming platforms. With DistroKid, you get way more than distribution though. They also offer a plethora of extra free features to help you promote your music. Hyperfollow, for example, is an easy way to create a landing page for your releases that allows people to pre-save it if it's unreleased, or redirect them to their favorite platform if it's already out. Recently, they even added this feature for you as the artist, so this effectively now becomes your new link in bio that you can post all over your socials. If you're ready to start reaching a broader audience with your music, then consider signing up to DistroKid with my link down below, or by visiting ivancalderon.com/DistroKid for 7% off your first year. Okay, so taking a look at the arrangement here, for the verse, I did not want to keep the same sample chop that I had for the chorus. I usually like to arrange my beats in such a way that whenever someone listens to it, they're able to immediately tell in what part of the beat they are in. So then what I ended up doing is I brought in, or I basically programmed a second set of chops for the verse. Now those chops sound like this. Now at this point, just like the chorus, I did want to have a little bit more body in my melodic section, and I did try the keys first, but they just weren't sitting quite well with these new chops. So what I did was I brought in a pad. Now that pad sounds like this. Very, very much sustained, very atmospheric, and it has the exact same chords as the keys. So then if you put that together with the loop and then the current drums that we have, this is what we get. Now, at this point, as you might have noticed, this sample chop does not have enough of a prominent bass like the one from the chorus. So at this point, I did have to come in and pretty much program my own bass. Now for this, I did use my bass guitar that you see in the background here, and I basically just followed the same root notes from the chords that I was playing. And now there is a part towards the end of this sample where you do hear a little bit of a bass. Let's see if I can play here for you. That da-na-na-na, that little run, and then at the end here. So for those portions, I basically just doubled what was already there because I didn't want to make something clash. Now for the bass, I am running this through Guitar Rig 6, so this is what it sounds like with everything else. But that pretty much is the beat. Let me know what you think of it down below. Hope you enjoy. But that's it for me. Once again, let me know what you think of the beat down below. Thank you once again to DistroKid for sponsoring this video. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you on the next one.